First contact, Jace Harlow wiped sweat from his brow as he crested the ridge. 2 moons hung in the purple sky of exoplanet KR7, casting strange shadows across the barren landscape. He'd been mapping the planet's northern hemisphere for 3 weeks now, alone except for his survey equipment, and the occasional callback to the research vessel orbiting above. The crater before him wasn't on any of his charts. Fresh impact? Maybe? Jace adjusted his oxygen mask and approached the edge cautiously. Something glinted at the center, not rock, but metal. His heart rate quickened. Command. I've got an unidentified object at coordinates 473912, reported into his comm. Static answered. The magnetic storms must be blocking transmission again. The descent into the crater took 15 minutes. As Jace neared the object, he realized it wasn't just wreckage, it was a ship. Alien design, sleek and predatory. His breath caught in his throat when he saw the insignia etched on its hull. Skorden, the warrior race that had been terrorizing the outer colonies for years. Sound made him spin around, hand reaching for his sidearm. A figure emerged from behind a section of torn hull, towering over his 6-foot frame. The alien warrior wore damaged armor that seemed to shift colors with each movement, matching the environment. What caught Jace's attention, however, were the eye's vertical pupils within amber irises. Watching him with unmistakable intelligence, blood of an iridescent blue leaked from a wound in the warrior's side. Stay back, Jace said, raising his weapon. I'm not looking for trouble. The alien made a sound like wind through crystal, then spoke in halting English. Human, you should, flee.
The voice
Was surprisingly melodic, despite its threatening tone.
You're injured,
Jace observed. Years of survival training battled with his instincts for self-preservation. I have medical supplies. No assistance, required. The warrior tried to stand straighter, but stumbled. One clawed hand clutching the wound. Against all common sense, Jace holstered his weapon. I'm Jace Harlow, cartographer, and you're a long way from the Skorden fleet. Alien's head tilted, studying him. Navarra, scout commander. 13th Division, her crest. Jace now recognized the alien as female, by the elongated spines along her skull, flared slightly. You show no fear. I'm terrified, Jace admitted with a wry smile. But my mother always said stupidity and bravery look remarkably similar. Navarra's eyes narrowed. Humans. Unpredictable. Look, Jace said, slowly opening his pack. I've got sealant gel that should work on your physiology. Your ship's wrecked, communications are down, and we're both stuck on this rock. I help you. Maybe you don't disembowel me. Deal. For several heartbeats, Navarra remained motionless. Then, to Jace's surprise, she lowered herself to a seated position on a piece of debris. Temporary alliance, she conceded. Until rescue. As Jace approached with his medical kit, he noticed something unexpected in her fierce expression. Curiosity, perhaps even respect. The stories always painted the Skorden as merciless killers, incapable of negotiation or mercy. This might sting, he warned. Applying the gel to the jagged wound, Navarra didn't flinch, but her crest vibrated slightly. Your species is considered weak, soft, yet you approach an enemy without hesitation. Jace shrugged. Humanity's greatest strength is doing incredibly stupid things that occasionally work out brilliantly. For the first time, Navarra's expression shifted into something almost resembling amusement. Fascinating. Neither realized that this chance encounter would change both their species forever. Reluctant alliance dawn broke over the crater's edge, casting long shadows across the alien wreckage. Jace checked his scanner again, frowning at the readings. We've got movement 3 clicks north, he said, pocketing the device. And it's not wildlife. Navarra paused from salvaging components from her ship. Her crest extended fully a warning sign Jace had learned meant heightened alertness. Vekari scouts, she said, voice low. They pursue Vekari. I thought they were your allies. No longer. Navarra secured a small device to her armor. They betrayed Skorden High Command. Now they hunt any survivors from my division. Jace processed this new information. The diplomatic briefings had never mentioned a fracture within the alien coalition. So, they're your enemies. Which makes them? Still your enemies, Navarra completed. Vicari consider all non-spacefaring species disposable. Humans rank especially low. Fantastic. Jace checked his weapons charge. Options. The Western Mountains. Magnetic interference will hide our signatures. They moved quickly, Jace struggling to match Navarra's pace despite her injury. By midday, they'd reached the foothills. Stopping briefly in the shelter of an overhanging cliff, "Your wound reopened?" Jace noted, seeing fresh blue fluid seeping through the makeshift bandage. Psst. Irrelevant. We must continue. Not if you bleed out. He reached for his medkit, but Navarra caught his wrist with surprising gentleness. You expend resources on an enemy? Why? Jace met her amber gaze. Out here, we're just two people trying to survive. Something shifted in her expression. Your logic is unfamiliar. As Jace redressed her wound, Navarra watched his hands work with fascination. Your species touches freely. Without consequence? Generally speaking, is that not common for Skorden? Contact outside battle is ... restricted, especially with other species.
S.
She hesitated. It implies vulnerability. Trust, Jace countered. Their conversation halted at the sound of aerial engines. A Vicari scout ship passed overhead, its searchlight sweeping the terrain. Down. Navarra pushed Jace into a crevice, her armored body shielding his. They remained motionless, breaths mingling in the confined space as the ship made another pass. They're using thermal scanners, Jace whispered. Navarra's crest flattened against her skull. My armor can mask one heat signature. Without warning, she pressed closer, enveloping him completely within her shielding field. Her face was inches from his, those alien eyes wide and alert. After agonizing minutes, the ship moved on. Neither moved immediately. Unexpectedly noble of you, Jace said finally. Tactical decision, Navarra replied, though something in her voice wavered. You possess medical knowledge I require.
Aye.
Jace smiled. Right, purely strategic. As they continued their trek toward the mountains, Jace noticed a change in Navarra's demeanor. The rigid formality began to soften. Her questions about Earth and human customs becoming more frequent. That evening, as they made camp in a cave, Navarra shared her rations, a gesture unthinkable days earlier. Your species survives through cooperation, she observed. Skorden values strength above all. Different evolutionary paths, I guess, Jace said. Though I'd argue compassion is its own kind of strength, Navarra considered this. Perhaps there is wisdom in your weakness. Gee, thanks, Jace laughed, for the first time since they'd met. Navarra's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. You are. Not what I expected, Jace Harlow. Likewise, Commander Navarra. Outside, twin moons illuminated the landscape, while inside the cave, impossible bridges began to form between worlds. Breaking protocol, the emergency transmitter crackled to life, startling both of them from sleep. Navarra reached it first, her movements fluid despite 5 days in the wilderness. Skorden command to Scout Navarra. Signal received. Report status. Jace watched Navarra's posture transforms, pine straightening, crest rising to full attention. She responded in her native language, a series of crystalline sounds interspersed with deeper tones. When she finished, she turned to find Jace preparing his equipment. Are people coming for you? He asked. Yes. Extraction team arrives within 2 planetary rotations. Her voice carried an unfamiliar edge. They request information on human physiological weaknesses. Excuse me? Standard protocol. All encounters with unknown species must be documented for tactical assessment. Navarra avoided his gaze. I am ordered to detain you for study. The air between them thickened with tension. After days of shared dangers and growing trust, the reminder of their people's conflict stood stark between them. So what happens now? You zap me with that fancy wrist device and drag me back to your mothership. Navarra's crest flattened, a sign of distress Jace had come to recognize. That would be expected, but I have transmitted false coordinates. The words emerged reluctantly. We have 18 hours to separate. You should return to your research vessel. Jace stared at her. You're letting me go? That's treason for your people, isn't it? The punishment is severe, she acknowledged. Her amber eyes finally met his. You saved my life. Skorden honor demands repayment. Honor, huh? Jace stepped closer. Nothing to do with the fact that we've become friends? Friendship is... She struggled with the concept. Skorden do not form attachments easily, especially with species we might one day conquer. Charming. Despite everything, Jace smiled. For what it's worth, I think you're different from what your commanders expect you to be. Something vulnerable flickered across Navarra's features. Her voice lowered. The past days have been... confusing. Your species touches, shares, trusts with alarming ease. These concepts are foreign to Skorden. Is that why you flinch whenever I get too close? Navarra looked down at her clawed hands. My people evolved from solitary hunters. Physical contact outside combat or reproduction is rare. Yet I observe how freely you offer assistance, how your touch communicates without words. On impulse, Jace slowly extended his hand, palm up. May I? Hesitantly, Navarra placed her three-fingered hand in his. The texture was surprisingly smooth, warm. In my culture, Jace explained, this is how we form connections. Through touch, it creates. Vulnerability, Navarra said, but didn't withdraw. That's the point. Trust requires vulnerability. Something shifted in Navarra's expression, revelation forming behind those alien eyes. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her free hand and placed it against Jace's cheek. Mimicking a gesture she'd seen him make when deep in thought. This is acceptable, she asked, uncertainty in her voice. Jace's heart pounded. More than acceptable. The Skorden have no word for this feeling, Navarra admitted quietly. We humans have several, Jace replied. None of them simple. As darkness fell, two beings from worlds at war explored the fragile beginning of something neither fully understood, something that might just change everything. The bridge between worlds morning. Light filtered through the cave entrance as Jace checked his coordinates. The rendezvous point with his research vessel was less than a day's journey south. Navarra stood at the cave mouth, her tall silhouette framed against the alien sky. Your ship awaits you, she said without turning. I will travel north to mislead my extraction team. Jace approached, standing beside her. The valley below stretched out in shades of amber and rust. Come with me, he suggested impulsively. My captain would protect you. We could explain that a Skorden warrior abandoned her duty, betrayed classified information. Navarra's crest rippled with emotion. My people do not forgive such transgressions. Then let me stay. Help you explain what you've learned about humans. Navarra turned to him, her amber eyes intense. You would risk your life on the assumption that my superiors might listen? I've made worse bets. Jace grinned, though his heart raced. Last night's connection had shifted something fundamental between them. Navarra hesitated, then slowly extended her hand as he had taught her. When their fingers intertwined, she spoke softly. Your courage continues to surprise me. The moment shattered as a shadow passed overhead a Skorden extraction vessel, much sooner than expected. They tracked the transmission, Navarra hissed, pushing Jace back into the cave. Hide. Not happening. Jace checked his weapon. We face this together. The ship landed in the clearing below, and 3 armored Skorden emerged. Unlike Navarra's more streamlined form, these warriors were bulkier, their armor aggressive with protruding spikes. Navarra identified, her posture shifting to military precision. My superior officer. The lead Skorden approached, towering over both of them. His voice boomed through an external speaker. Scout Commander Navarra. Explain the human's presence. Navarra stepped forward. This human aided me after crash landing. I have gathered valuable intelligence on their physiology and psychology. Commander Thrane's helmet retracted, revealing a face similar to Navarra's, but scarred, crest fully extended in dominance. You were ordered to capture, not collaborate. His gaze shifted to Jace. The human appears unrestrained. The human Jace interrupted, is standing right here and would appreciate being addressed directly. The commander's eyes narrowed. Silence. Prey species. With respect, Commander Navarra interjected, I've discovered humans possess attributes worthy of reassessment. Their adaptability, resourcefulness, you've been compromised. Thrain cut her off. He gestured to his subordinates. Secure the human. Navarra will face tribunal for betrayal. As the warriors advanced, Jace stepped forward. Touch her, and find out how prey species fight when protecting their own. Stunned silence followed his declaration. Your own. Commander Thrain's voice carried genuine confusion. You claim kinship with a Skordan? I claim alliance with Navarra, Jace corrected. Who showed me more honor in 5 days than your entire empire has in a decade of contact with humanity? Navarra's expression betrayed astonishment at his defense. Something passed between them, understanding, perhaps even affection. Fascinating, Thrain observed, studying their interaction. The human displays protective behavior toward you, Scout Commander, a response previously undocumented. In that moment of analysis, Jace saw opportunity. Humans weren't just study subjects or potential conquests. They were an anomaly, the knowledge-obsessed. A Skordan couldn't easily categorize. Perhaps Navarra suggested carefully. There is strategic advantage in understanding rather than conquering. The standoff stretched tense seconds into minutes before Thrain responded. You will both return for full debriefing, he decided. This. Alliance merits investigation. They boarded the extraction vessel. Navarra's hand briefly found Jesusa's silent promise amid uncertainty. Whatever happens, she whispered. You have shown me what courage truly means. Jace smiled. And you've shown me that bridges can form in the most unlikely places. The ship lifted off, carrying them toward a future neither could predict. New beginnings, 6 months later. Jace stood before the newly established Interspecies Diplomatic Council, adjusting his formal uniform nervously. The chamber held representatives from 12 spacefaring civilizations, humans, seated prominently beside Skordan for the first time in galactic history. Across the chamber, Navarra watched him, her ceremonial armor gleaming without the battle scars it once bore. Their journey from that remote planet to this historic moment had been fraught with challenges, interrogations, suspicion, resistance from both sides. The Human Skordan Research Initiative has yielded unexpected benefits, announced Counselor Wren, Jace's former captain. Cross-species medical applications alone have advanced treatment options for 17 genetic conditions. Commander Thrain, now Skordan ambassador, inclined his head in acknowledgement. The alliance has proven surprisingly advantageous. What remained unspoken was how it all began with an injured scout and a lone cartographer who chose connection over conflict. When the session concluded, Jace made his way through the crowd toward Navarra, who waited in the observatory overlooking Earth, her crest lifted slightly as he approached a private greeting. Ambassador Harlow, she acknowledged formally, though her eyes held warmth. The council accepted your proposal. Our proposal, he corrected. I just presented it. The cultural exchange program was your idea, yet you convinced your government to accept Skordan visitors despite our history. She turned to the viewing window. Your world is beautiful, different from what our intelligence suggested. Seeing things firsthand usually changes perspectives. Jace moved beside her, close enough that their arms nearly touched. Speaking of which, how are you adapting to all this? Closeness. Navarra's mouth curved in what had become a genuine smile. The physical customs of humans remain challenging. However, I find certain interactions increasingly acceptable. Just acceptable? Jace raised an eyebrow. Perhaps more than acceptable, she admitted, extending her hand in the gesture that had become their private ritual. When their fingers intertwined, Jace marveled at how natural it felt now this connection between species evolution had designed to be strangers. The other Skordan officers still don't understand, Navarra said quietly, how touch can communicate without threat. They will, eventually. Jace squeezed her hand gently. Just as humans are learning that strength comes in different forms. Beyond the window, Earth rotated slowly, clouds swirling across blue oceans. On the opposite side of the chamber, representatives from both species watched their interaction with varying degrees of confusion, curiosity, and hope. "We make them uncomfortable," Navera observed. "Good," Jace smiled. "Change should be a little uncomfortable." Later, as they walked through the station's arboretum, earth plants mingling with specimens from the Skordan homeworld, Nevera stopped beside a flowering tree. "My superiors initially sent me to assess human weaknesses," she confessed. "Instead, I discovered your greatest strength, which is your willingness to reach across differences." Her amber eyes held his. "To touch what frightens you." Jace stepped closer. "And yours is learning to let yourself be touched." Round them, impossible hybrid flowers bloom, botanical symbols of what could grow when different worlds found common ground. As diplomatic history unfolded in chambers above, two beings who should have been enemies stood in a garden of new possibilities. "Beginning something no one has attempted before," Navarra mused. "My species would call this reckless. Mine would call it brave," Jace replied, gently touching her face. The Skordan warrior no longer trembled at human contact. Instead, she leaned into it, embracing a future neither world had imagined possible.